are some good qualifications that make a good bookkeeper?
Probably what qualifications make a good painter, a good business owner, Knowledge of the trade is very important, and knowing how to categorize transactions. Now, a bookkeeper may not know all tax advantages, but they are aware of many of them. Let's say you make $250,000 in sales a year, then that would be probably a good time to start looking for a bookkeeper.
Many painters are so busy through the summer seasons, and then all of a sudden it comes to a grinding halt right when the winter changes, fall changes. Then they're like, what do I do, right? So yeah, you're right. Forecasting is really important to do.
And time is money, and if you can save the time, you can usually save money, and also, or at least make money.
There is a serious crisis in America these days, not only for painting contractors, but for every other kind of contractor that is out there. And no, it's not that there's too much work, and no, it's not that there's not enough labor, and no, it's not that there's rising interest rates and inflation, and not that the supply chain is out of control and material shortages. On top of that, there is a crisis, and that crisis is that contractors across America are leaving money on the table. And in today's show on Trusted House Painter Academy, we're going to talk with Doug Lee, and Doug Lee is from Bookkeeping Done For You, and we're going to talk a little bit about a few things that you can do to actually make more money doing what you do as a contractor, and we're going to give some tips away on how you can actually get this done and stop stressing about your bookkeeping and your accounting. So, Doug, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm doing good, Paul, and thank you for inviting me on this show. I look forward to discussing with you the ins and outs about bookkeeping.
That's great, because as a small painting contractor myself, when I first started out, I didn't know what to do. I had a shoebox. I threw everything in there, and I waited till the end of the year, and then I was afraid to give it to somebody, and so I waited 4 months, and it got worse, and then I got letters from the government, and it scared me, and I don't think I'm the only one that deals with this problem, right?
Right. Yeah. I see people all the time that just leave their bookkeeping alone, hoping it'll do itself. But
So how long have you been doing bookkeeping for?
I've been doing bookkeeping for over 20 years. I did a bookkeeping as an office manager for a retail store for quite a few years, and that sort of introduced me to give me a taste of bookkeeping, and I really liked it. So about 1999, I moved to another location and was office manager for a contractor. Grew more and more interested in bookkeeping because I like to have things all organized and laid out and categorized. And been doing bookkeeping for electrical contractor for about 23 or 4 years, and started a couple of years ago doing bookkeeping on the side. I just can't get enough of it.
So you're well versed, you know what you're doing, and you've got a lot of experience, which is probably what most small business contractors want, right? So what would you say is the number one problem, or the biggest problem that most contractors, painting contractors, handyman, carpenters, any other contractor faces in their business when it comes to saving money, or even, let's be specific, bookkeeping? What is the biggest problem that they face?
Well, I find people, by and large, contractors, as well as other business owners, don't reconcile their bank statements every month. I'm dealing with a couple of businesses, or two or three businesses right now, that at varying degrees, they just leave their bookkeeping up to chance. That means some of them never had an organized software program. Some of them start a software program, but don't maintain it. Not reconciling is the biggest one, I find. Another one that they don't set aside time for their bookkeeping. They keep pushing it off till I'll get to it later. And that is never good. And then they also, if they keep their receipts, they don't make notes on them to recall the memory of what those receipts are for. Those are about three of the biggest taboos that you don't want to have to do later on.
And that's the biggest mistakes you see. Well, I'm guilty of all three. I've been there, done that. I'm an artist I'm a painter, and I don't like numbers. I like dealing with physicalities, people, paint, colors, activity, and I'm not a numbers guy. So let's just make it easy. What does reconciliation mean to the novice person?
Every month now, nowadays, people probably get it by email, but you get a statement of account. And what the statement of account is a listing of all the transactions that took place in your checking or credit card account over the past period. Usually, 30 days. It may be a calendar month. It may begin in the beginning of the month and end the middle of the next month. But and what you do is a reconciliation. Is it you have it listed down that you made these transactions, and if you're doing it in a software program, you want to make sure those are recorded, and you match them to make sure that your balance, your beginning balance is the beginning balance the bank has, and that your ending balance is the same as the bank or credit card company. And that process of looking and matching is called reconciliation.
And it's also, is that synonymous with balancing of the books?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. And the other thing that you mentioned, the last one you said, many painting or many contractors, they don't keep track of their files, or they look at a receipt and they don't remember what it is. So is there a suggestion or a tip, $100 tip that you'd give them watching right now on how they can avoid having to look at that receipt saying, wow, what happened there? And what, is there any tip you can give?
Well, if they could just take a few minutes, there's apps you can get on your phone. You could just take a picture of the receipt and make a little note, like a job name or a category of an expense, what it was for, or if it's personal or if it's business. And that just is helpful because if you take a picture of the receipt, the picture will have a date on it. And then if you have written a note on there, then you'll know what it's for. And then if you have a bookkeeper and they ask you what that's for, you'll quickly can go back and check it out. Or you could save your emails into a folder that's called receipts.
I see. And you could even write on the back of the receipt, perhaps, if needs be, right? With a little pen and paper. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest things, one of the biggest aha moments my bookkeeper told me is just write on the back, Paul. You got to write on what you're doing. I'm like, oh, yeah, that's a dummy thing, right? But there's a ton of apps out there, too, that you can use for sure.
Yeah, and there's even one called Shoebox, in which everybody has used the shoebox before, and you could send that shoebox off to this company, and they'll digitize it for you and send it back in a spreadsheet.
The crisis in America is that contractors don't have a bookkeeper, or they're doing their own bookkeeping. So maybe explain, how does hiring a bookkeeper actually save money?
The time savings that you would normally use as a contractor, writing down the receipts or keeping them organized or filing them or putting them in a software, that time is valuable. Your time as a contractor is very valuable. And many contractors can, if they spend that same amount of time going and making the money that they do with their business, can make more money per hour than it costs them to hire a bookkeeper. And then you don't have all the pressure, all the stress involved with worrying about whether your transactions are recorded or who's taking care of you. Your reports are organized, and the categorization is usually much better than maybe a novice would do. With the reporting, you can actually see some trends of your business. Is the sales, following the pattern that your budget is wanting it to? How many customers do you have, and how many invoices are you having? Is that same trend happening as in past? Is it growing? Is it decreasing? It just gives you a lot of extra information about your business. And time is money. And if you can save the time, you can, usually save money and also, or at least make the money.
Yeah, I think you nailed it there. And that is seeing trends, because today it's all about capturing data, lagging indicators versus leading indicators. And I guess bookkeeping is a slight lagging indicator, but if you do it on a monthly basis and you reconcile your books, then you can start to see those trends of where you're making money, where you're not making money. Just a quick little segue. remember a few years ago we did that, and we looked at what in America they call them homeowners associations. In Canada we call them stratas, and they're buildings where multiple owners live in it, apartment buildings. And we decided to reconcile our books and take a look at some of the trends, and we realized that we started getting more jobs from that. So we changed our marketing towards that, aligning our marketing with what is actually coming in the door. So that kind of opened my eyes to say it's more than just a shoebox. It's more than just a swipe the card, get the receipt, and throw it away and give it to the guy behind the desk. It's actually looking at your data and tracking trends so that you can find out where you should be working and where you should not be working. So it's all about doing your job. I'm a great painter. I suck at doing accounting. And then when I do it wrong, and then you got to redo it. So there's money on the table that's being wasted. So what would you say is the hardest habit to change as a contractor in order to get in the routine of having a regular routine?
Just taking the time to do it on a routine basis is the hardest thing for a contractor, because it's like your honey-do list at house, and if your wife doesn't, remind you about that honey-do list, it isn't going to happen. All the transactions that you make in your business, they're not going to scream at you until it's tax time, or it's not going to scream at you until it's time to bill your customer. And if you don't have the habit of saving your receipts, writing down information regarding those receipts, you're going to be lost when when the reckoning comes.
I've been down that road and I felt it, and I'm sure many of the people watching this show right now are either going through that or they felt that exactly there. So
one extra thing that a bookkeeper can do, and you sort of alluded to that when you had time to go segment your business to the homeowner association. If you have a different income types, you can have a basic income, and then you can have subcategories of the different ways you make money. In your record keeping, you can count expenses toward that particular segment so you can know which part of your business is the most profitable. And also, trends are very important. And it was amazing in the retail trade, each month, without too much of a variance, this month's was the same as last month's proportionally to the year's sales. And so sometimes you can do forecasting based on the trends that you have, not only to know your history, but also to be able to see what is likely in the future.
That's right. That's a good point. And when you make goals, you actually put stuff in front of you to work towards versus just kind of reacting to the phone or reacting to whatever happens. And then you're stuck. As a painter here in Canada, where I'm from, it's cold in the winter, so we don't do any exteriors. And many painters are so busy through the summer seasons, and then all of a sudden it comes to a grinding halt right when the winter changes, fall changes. Then they're like, what do I do, right? So yeah, you're right. Forecasting is really important to do. You've got lots of years of bookkeeping underneath you. What are some good qualifications that make a good bookkeeper?
Probably what qualifications make a good painter, a good business owner, Knowledge of the trade is very important, and knowing how to categorize transactions. Now, a bookkeeper may not know all tax advantages, but they are aware of many of them. Probably being trustworthy, having a good reputation is very important. Being true, probably something that's very important. And I think probably having empathy for potential customer. That's very important, is to know where they've walked. I've run upon times when the books are just a mess. When they start doing their bookkeeping, they don't intend for it to be a mess. They have good intention. It's until there's a pain point that pushes past its comfort level, I guess, nothing's going to push them to that. And so I constantly work on history. The business owner had good intentions, and it just didn't happen the way they wanted it to.
Because they're not bookkeepers.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Should a bookkeeper give advice on how to do things? Like, would that make a good bookkeeper? Someone who's always kind of giving you little tips on advice on how to be more efficient, how to be more organized?
That would be good. Yeah. And the way I kind of view bookkeeping with various companies is that I want to be a team player. Obviously, the owner is the team leader, but if you see certain trends that are happening, ways that you're doing spending and that sort of thing, You can just draw the attention to them, and encouragement on how to do transactions or how to report transactions is always a help. And I'm sure anybody that has a business is open to that.
Is there a certain like financial revenue or sales budget or pinpoint that you generally don't need a bookkeeper? You can kind of do your own, and once you hit a certain point, you definitely need a bookkeeper. Like, when do you need a
Yeah.
bookkeeper? When do you not need a bookkeeper?
There's different comfort levels of people. Let's say you make $250,000 in sales a year, then that would be probably a good time to start looking for a bookkeeper. Most bookkeepers can take a few customers that are even less than that. If they gross less than 250,000, but they just hate bookkeeping with a passion, but they really want it to be everything to be right, they might push what they would normally be willing to spend as a percentage of their business, going ahead and biting the bullet and hiring a bookkeeper.
And what are the primary like duties or responsibilities that a bookkeeper brings to a contractor that really helps them save time?
Well, we categorize transactions, all the transactions of the business. We try to organize it in a way that is beneficial to both the contractor or the business owner and the tax preparer, future tax preparer. We can offer reporting, snapshot of their business, doing some comparison with previous months and transactions. Like I mentioned earlier, kind of being a team player with, like for instance, how you would record transactions that are wages that a business owner would have that as a sole proprietor is different than what you would have for somebody that's a corporation or an LLC. And the way you do the transactions is a lot different. The way you categorize transactions is set up in something called a chart of accounts, which these are all names of accounts where transactions are laying. A lot of times chart of accounts are meaningless to a business owner. They don't know what, like you didn't know earlier, or some didn't know what reconciliation means.
Yeah.
Well, what you need to do is have it in such a way, naming those accounts, where it makes a business owner understand what that categorization means, what falls under that categorization. They may not know what leasehold improvements mean.
That's right.
But if you say landlord expenses, you might say that, and that would make a little more sense to them.
Or even something like amortization, right?
Yes.
Yeah. What does that mean? What is an amortization? You do it yearly, annually, what do you do? And
how much you owe? How much more do you owe on the loan?
Yeah, exactly. So you're based out of Tennessee, correct?
Yes.
And you take online clients all around America, is that right?
Yes.
And
I
so
have a
who is
client in Washington State, one in Montana. I have one in New Jersey. I have one in North Carolina, and have one here right in Crossville.
And so you're taking clients right now as we speak. And so
Yes.
anybody watching this can contact Doug at the number down below.
Yes.
Doug at bookkeepingdoneforyou.com.
Yes.
That's your email, or bookkeepingdoneforyou.com is your website. And I guess you take it there. What's the difference between a bookkeeper and an accountant? And are you an accountant?
Well, in some states, Tennessee is one of them, that I could say that I'm an accountant and a bookkeeper. I call myself a bookkeeper because in other states, which I want to represent myself in, they make you have a license for that. Now, I don't have to have a license because I'm in Tennessee. But just to help avoid confusion, I call myself a bookkeeper. Some people would say that bookkeeping is the categorization and some of the reporting, and some people would call accountants the ones that maybe prepare taxes. A bookkeeper could file taxes if you know the tax laws, but CPA is someone that's a title that no one can have unless they have that designation awarded to them by their state. And they have a lot more stringent rules, but they also have some capabilities. They do a lot of reporting that's more diverse than a bookkeeper or a regular accountant would have, just a different segment of the accounting field.
An accountant doesn't necessarily do bookkeeping, but a bookkeeper doesn't always do accounting. They're somewhat separate. Sometimes they're the same, but they
Yeah.
definitely have different duties. Is that right?
Yes.
And in other words, if you're making money, period, on more than 100,000 sales, you should definitely have a bookkeeper. Now, can a bookkeeper file your taxes for you? I think you might have mentioned that.
Some do. I don't fool with taxes personally right now, but
Okay.
I would rather get into the advisory services than in tax services.
And who is your ideal target customer? Like, you obviously contractors, but like maybe describe who your target customer would be, who you
I
help.
I guess my sweet spot, if you want to call it that, it would be contractors that do anywhere from $500,000 a year to 1.5 million, 2 million in sales.
And you can prepare them, put them in Dropbox or any kind of online cloud, and they can.
Yep.
It's pretty seamless how you do it, right?
Yes.
For a bookkeeper, what should an average contractor be paying? Monthly,
Well,
annually?
there's probably some minimums that a bookkeeper will have. Some won't. I don't know. But if you consider, there's a couple of ways to do this. You can consider possibly 0.75 to 3% of a a business's gross income could be designated for bookkeeping.
I see.
And that would be a good range because there may be a variety of tasks that a bookkeeper would do for a certain business. And I don't pigeonhole. I don't have a set fee except for maybe a minimum. It just depends on how many different services, like how much reporting do you want, how much communication do you want. Do you want to have a weekly meeting? How often do you want me to do your books? Are you fine with doing them quarterly? Are you fine with doing them monthly? How about weekly? How about some are wanting daily? And it just depends on how much interaction you have. There's another way to figure it out is if you figure all your transactions. That means every time you spend any money, anytime you make any money. If you could consider all those things, a bookkeeper sometimes will charge 75 cents, maybe to $1.25 for each of those. But again, they may have a minimum that they allow, that they won't work for any less than that.
Okay. And do you recommend your contractors do some preparation work before they give it to you, or do you just say throw it in a shoebox and give it to me?
Well, if they haven't done any bookkeeping, I'd almost rather start from scratch. Usually you can glean from a statement, and I can transfer that into the software. It just depends on what kind of business they're in. If it's pretty well self-explanatory, things at Lowe's are always going to be job related, or Home Depot, or they're always going to be job related. Then we can work together. It's like a new team member may need to be in communication with the quarterback, so to speak, on a pretty regular basis in the beginning. But as they get to know one another, they'll be able to do transactions without much, involvement or interaction together.
Yeah. Is that something you provide? Is that little, like you said, empathy or a little bit of help to kind of guide a young contractor what they can do to kind of get it ready for you? Do you give them that advice?
Oh yeah, yeah. What I do is I like to have a meeting with them, find out how they started the business, um, what their goals are in the company, where they're at now in their business, right?
Yeah.
What's causing them pain
Yeah.
in regard to their bookkeeping, in regard to their business as a whole. And I usually have like a 3-step method that gets them that we get them either caught up with their bookkeeping or cleaned up, and then we go and look at the processes, how they're doing their business, how are they spending their money, and we set up systems. And then the third phase is to make those systems work for us to where they're kind of work, do themselves. And we kind of look at forecasting and try to see how we're on goal or how we're set for meeting their goals.
I think, for most contractors that have never done this before, it is a kind of a black hole. You don't know what to do, what to expect.
Mhm.
And Personally, I approached a couple and they said, no, I don't want you. So they weren't really empathetic to me. I was kind of disordered. 2 years of bookkeeping, and all these letters from the government. I think I felt embarrassed.
Yeah.
And I was
Yeah.
like, oh no, right? So I found a really good bookkeeper, and she was great. I read out of the
Oh,
gate,
that's great.
everything for me. Here's your books, here's your tabs, like super organized, and that really helped me because I'm not always that organized. So for those who are doing their own bookkeeping, or don't need a bookkeeper, is there any advice, maybe 2 or 3 tips that you would give to someone who doesn't need a bookkeeper or is doing their own bookkeeping? Like, is there any advice that you give, like a certain software to use or certain accounting principles that you'd use that they should follow?
Just depends on how much time you have to spend on those things. But you can get a software pretty cheap nowadays. You could get into QuickBooks. You can pay maybe 20, 30 bucks a month for that. And there is, classes. You can probably find enough information on YouTube to do your own bookkeeping on QuickBooks. If $20 or $30 a month is too much for you, there's a plan. There's another software company called Xero. It's Xero, and they have some really inexpensive plans, like as low as $5 a month. That you can, I think maybe $10 a month. You can connect your bank. All your transactions will get dumped into there, and you just learn how to categorize. It's just like if I could ask you, what's the best way to paint a room? Or, you would probably give me some tips on, what to do. And I can probably find some of those things on YouTube.
Yes.
It's just a matter of what our comfort level is. And I'm probably as bad at painting as you are bad at bookkeeping.
That's what makes the world a beautiful place, the diversity.
Colorful for me.
Absolutely. Like I get lost when it comes to numbers. My dad's an accountant. He works for the city. He's retired, but very different. Very different. I'm very much hands-on in the trades, get her done, get down, get dirty, customer service oriented. And he's definitely behind the computer on the desk doing numbers. And so it makes a beautiful team, actually, at the end of the day. What's some one example or 2 examples you can give without maybe mentioning your customer, but how you save the money?
A lot of times big companies will come to me when they've lost their bookkeeper. Or there's a company that I recently did something for, and he wanted to get some bonding because his contracting business has exploded in sales. He has lost some jobs because he didn't have bonding. He had a bookkeeper that I see a lot of bookkeepers that are in over their head, and she was doing the best she could with YouTube, and that'll be good to start out. But once a business gets big, and this company was probably last year was a $1.5 million, and this year is looking like they're going to be $3 million. And she was just needing a lot of help. There was a lot of miscategorization. There were things showing, there's a couple reports that people have. There's a profit and loss, which takes your sales and your expenses and shows you a profit. It shows either a profit or a loss. And then there's a balance sheet, which what that is a snapshot in time for your business. It shows you what the company owns in assets and what they owe in liabilities. And so some of the things that she was reporting went on the balance sheet and shouldn't have been. Some of the things that were on the profit and loss should have been on the balance sheet. And because this was a mess, the owner was not able to get bonded. So we got that sorted for them. I don't know what kind of jobs they lost, but I do know that they're better suited now to gain the future ones.
Well, one thing my father taught me was a thing called opportunity cost.
Mm-hmm.
There's costs, and there's opportunity costs, and it's an intangible cost. So what is the opportunity cost of missing that job or not getting that job? Or even better, what is the opportunity cost of getting that job?
Mm-hmm.
A big, huge character house that needs, 300 hours of work and an intricate labor versus, getting 20 small little jobs that only use step ladders and you're in and out in 3 days and your cash flow's fast. So what's the opportunity cost? So it sounds like this customer of yours had lost out on some opportunity costs, which aren't necessarily on your books, but they're definitely there, right? They're
Yeah.
definitely
Yes.
present. So Doug, where can people find you and contact you in order to, get your services, chat with you, get that intake call to see if they're a right fit with your company?
A real good place is to just reach out to me on Facebook. Can either message me or just I try to post quite often during the week. Just look at some of my posts. If there's something that catches your eye, I'll try to respond to it. And you can I think you probably can just message me directly. I usually my personal page because it's a lot easier to seem inconspicuous. I don't want to push my services on someone, but I do want to be available if they were wanting my services. I usually try to find out where they are with their bookkeeping, find out where they want to go, and I'll just bridge the gap.
Sounds like it's pretty easy.
Yeah.
So you also have a website. It's www.bookkeepingdoneforyou.com. Is that correct?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So people can go there,
Yeah.
contact you there, or there's the number on the screen there, 931-287-9248. Well, thanks a lot for coming on the show today, Doug. I really appreciate you giving us insights about accounting or about bookkeeping, about where me as a contractor and all the other contractors kind of should look in their blind spot, and how easy it is actually to find a bookkeeper to get your bookkeeping done so that you can make more money and focusing on what you're doing. Is there any last words or any last piece of advice you want to give to anybody watching today?
Well, first of all, I want to thank you, Paul, for reaching out to me and having this conversation. I appreciate it a lot. I think a lot of contractors are just scared to maybe talk to someone about their bookkeeping. Some of them may be embarrassed. Some of them think that it's so easy. Why can't I just do it myself? And some can and some can't, and it doesn't. It's not bad to be in either camp. If you hate bookkeeping, many small businesses sort of enlist their wife or their spouse to do the bookkeeping, and that goes good sometimes for a while. Sometimes that puts a strain on the relationship, and sometimes it gets overwhelming to the spouse. So there's a myriad of reasons why reaching out to a bookkeeper would be important, and it'd be good to just reach out to me, and I'd hope to be able to send you some valuable information, and maybe we could work together.
That sounds great. So if you're watching the show and you think you need a bookkeeper, a reliable and trustworthy bookkeeper, you can go hire Doug Lee from Home Business Services Inc. He's going to definitely help you out and get you on track, and it's nothing to be afraid of. And in fact, you won't be in the crisis that everybody else is in because you're going to be making money. But of course, there's always crises. There's always, inflation and shortage of labor and paint costs and material costs and rising costs. There's, it's endless. But if we can save the money hiring and outsourcing professional bookkeepers, then we're going to be in a way better place. And in fact, when you grow a team and you create systems around that team, it helps you create more free time. And I think that's what every contractor wants, right? Thanks again for taking the time and all the patience and everything. And I look forward to chatting with you online more.
Yeah. God bless.
Okay. Take care.
Bye.
See ya.